सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। Jai Gurudev. So we'll do a bit of recap what we did yesterday. The wise do not grieve. This was the 11th verse of chapter 2. Shri Bhagavanuvacha अशोच्यानन्वशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासु न गतासूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः. So Shri Bhagavan said, you grieve for those who should not be grieved for, yet you speak words of wisdom. The wise do not grieve for those who are living or for those who are no longer living. So we did this twice yesterday. There are two elements. Yeah, I will just read this one more time. Very important verse. Arjuna confused about dharma and adharma and overwhelmed by sorrow became a shishya and asked for Shreyas. Wanting to help Arjuna out of his sorrow for good and knowing that relative Shreyas was useless here, Krishna's teaching was for imparting self-knowledge alone. The subject matter of the remainder of the Gita is self-knowledge, Atma-jnana, the cause for the removal of sorrow. Shankara's commentary starts with this verse since it marks the beginning of the teaching. While the word tvam, meaning you, refers to Arjuna, it can also apply to any second person. The word is significant given that the whole Vedanta Shastra is nothing but that thou art, tat tvam asi. The first 6 chapters of the Gita deal with you alone. What is you in the equation? Tat tvam asi. You are that means you are equated to that. That has to be presented, and the meaning given is the Lord, Ishvara. Therefore, Tat Tvam Asi means you are Ishvara. That there is a difference between you and the Lord is obvious. But because the statement Tat Tvam Asi is an equation, it seems as though you are equated to the Lord. The vision of the Shruti is that you are that Ishvara who is the cause for the entire creation. That Brahman you are. The Tattvam Asi equation is a statement, a Vakya of this vision. There are two elements involved here. One is Ishvara, the Lord, which is the meaning of the word Tat, and the other is the Jiva, the individual, which is the meaning of the word Tvam, you. Unless the meaning of you is properly understood, the equation cannot be understood because there is a contradiction. If the statement, you are Brahman, were to be a self evident fact, there would be no necessity for the teaching at all. However, there is a contradiction between Jiva and Ishvara, we have to resolve it. Unless there is absence of contradiction, there is no identity. Unless you recognize the real meaning of the word you, which means I, there is no way of discovering the identity between you and Ishvara that the Tattvam Asi equation reveals. Therefore, the first 6 chapters of the Gita emphasize you. The next 6 chapters deal with that, the Lord, and the last 6 chapters deal with the identity between the two. You will find as you proceed that the whole subject matter in the 7th chapter changes and that the last 6 chapters are significantly different. Arjuna's sorrow is your sorrow. Arjuna's sorrow, the subject matter of the first chapter, is the sorrow of any jiva, the individual, one who is subject to sorrow. That Arjuna was sad is not unusual. In fact, we are all with Arjuna. His sorrow seems to be very legitimate. If this situation could not cause sorrow, what could? We can well appreciate and sympathize with Arjuna because, for much lesser reasons, we find ourselves in even deeper trouble. This is the condition of the jiva. That the jiva is desirous of getting rid of sorrow is also obvious. That the jiva is subject to sorrow and is limited, and that the jiva wants to get rid of sorrow. These are two obvious things. Generally, people seek relief through escapes. What is significant here is that Arjuna wanted to resolve the sorrow for good, which is the reason we have a Gita Shastra. Arjuna was told straight away by Krishna, you, Arjuna, grieve unnecessarily. Over the shoulders of Arjuna, you too are being addressed. You too have entertained sorrow, the state of mind known as shoka. So, in one stroke, he says, you grieve unnecessarily. So, all the sadness that we go through, all the sorrow, the misery is unnecessary. What is deserving of grief? Shochya is that which deserves grief, that which has legitimate basis for sorrow. In society, we have universally accepted that certain events are matters for sorrow, while others are not. For example, when someone is about to be married, we do not send condolences, we send congratulations. Marriage is a matter for joy and laughter, not for sorrow. This is the case in any culture. For a death, on the other hand, even when there is relief involved because the person was suffering extreme pain and required constant care, there is at least a tinge of sadness when someone dies. Therefore, death is synonymous with mourning and can be called shochya universally. There is also personal shochya. You may be sad because of something that has come or gone, whereas another person may not be sad at all. A man may be very happy that his mother has come, whereas his wife is a pack of nerves. For him, the event is not shocha, but for her, it is a great shocha. Because this woman has walked into their home, one person becomes a pack of nerves. The other is ecstatic because he can show off his accomplishments to his mother. The event is the same for both of them, but for one person it is shocha and for the other it is ashocha. Thus, we find that some things are shocha universally and others are shocha only for an individual. Culturally, there may also be peculiar situations that are shochas. In some cultures, the birth of a girl is shocha, whereas in other cultures, the birth of a boy may cause sorrow, since too many boys are definitely a problem. Thus, an object of sorrow, shoka, is called shocha, just as an object of knowledge, jnana, is called jnaya. An object of sorrow means a situation that causes sorrow, be it an event or an experience. A situation that does not cause sorrow is called ashocha. Here, Krishna's contention is that whatever may be the situation, you have no legitimate reason for grief. In the coming verses, he will establish that there is no legitimate cause for sorrow, both from the relative and the absolute standpoints. The wise do not grieve. Here, Krishna told Arjuna that he had picked up sorrow where it was not warranted at all, and that people of knowledge, Panditas, do not entertain any grief. Panda means self knowledge, and a Pandita is one in whom self knowledge is born. Krishna also acknowledges in this verse that although Arjuna was grieving over that which did not deserve any grief, he had also spoken words of wisdom. Bhagavan remembered all of Arjuna's words from the first chapter when he spoke so eloquently about who would go to Naraka and why the Dharma would be in trouble, etc. While acknowledging the wisdom of Arjuna's words, Krishna told him that people of wisdom do not grieve. Arjuna was not a wise man, and that was his whole problem. Krishna knew that all he had to do was make Arjuna a Pandita so that he would not see a problem where there wasn't one, as he was presently doing. The sorrow itself was unwarranted, which was why he was aggrieved. With reference to what do the wise not grieve? Lord Yama, death, can interfere at any time. There are many breaths, and any one of them could be the last. One breath alone does not last for 80 years. Between every inhalation and every exhalation, there is a gap. Therefore, how do you know which breath will be the last? Only when the next breath comes do we know that the last breath was not the last. The verse makes a distinction between one who has breathed his last or her last and the one who has not. Men of wisdom do not entertain any grief either for the dead or for the not yet dead. Why was death referred to here? Because all of Arjuna's arguments revolved only around death. He was always talking about the imminent death of his teachers and members of his family. Destruction was involved because there was a battle ensuing. This was one reason. In addition, death is the only event that uniformly, universally evokes sorrow. We would never send condolences to the bereaved unless we knew they were sad. On the other hand, if the survivors were sometimes happy, we would not automatically send condolences. We would have first found out whether they were sad or not, and if not, if they were happy, we would have to send messages of congratulation. Without even a thought, however, we all send condolences because death is an event that universally evokes sorrow. Panda, the meaning of panda in Sanskrit is Panda Atma Vishaya Buddhihi Esham Te Panditaha. Panda is self knowledge. The one who has this self knowledge is a Pandita. To use an analogy for why death was used here, a boxer who wants to become the heavyweight champion of the world has only to fight one person, the present champion. All he has to do is knock him out and he will become the world champion. Similarly, if death is one event which invariably evokes sorrow in all, with reference to which the wise do not grieve, certainly the loss of hair or the loss of a relationship or marriage will not be the cause for sorrow. Finally, death is a particularly appropriate event to use in a discussion about sorrow and its removal when what is to be discussed is Atma, which is not subject to death. Krishna told Arjuna that anything he might look upon as a source of sorrow was not, nor would any wise man look upon anything as a source of sorrow because there is no source of sorrow. Source of sorrow. What is it that can cause sorrow? There can be only two sources: yourself, Atma, or a source other than yourself, Anatma. If Atma is the source of sorrow, then there is no problem. You will always be sad because sadness is your nature, your svabhava. In fact, when you are sad, you will be very happy because to be sad is your nature. A restless monkey is a healthy, happy monkey because restlessness is its nature. A quiet monkey is a problem and should be cause for concern. If you are taking care of a monkey who suddenly becomes very quiet, do not think he has become a sadhu and is meditating. He definitely has a problem and may require attention. Similarly, what is natural to you cannot be a source of sorrow. If sorrow is your own nature, then we have no cause for sorrow at all. We should all be happy being sad. Thus, if Atma is the source of my sorrow, then sadness is not a problem. Since sadness is a problem, we must analyze whether it is the Atma or the Anatma that is the source of our sadness. This means that either the world that you come across is the source of your sorrow or you yourself are its source. In other words, you are a source of sorrow to yourself. Therefore, we have to analyze Atma and Anatma from this perspective too, in order to discover the source of our sorrow. This analysis is the sole subject matter of the Gita. Panditas are those who know the Atma and Anatma. If you know the Atma, then you naturally know the Anatma. Also, because what is not Atma can only be Anatma. Conversely, if you know what Anatma is, you will also know what Atma is. Therefore, knowing one implies knowing the other. Arjuna's grief was due to not knowing the difference between Atma and Anatma. That is, he did not have Atma Anatma Viveka. Knowing the difference, Viveka, resolves the problem. This verse identifies the subject matter of the Gita as Atma Anatma Viveka, and states the result of such knowledge. Knowing themselves, the wise do not grieve. The Gita Shastra is the connection between the subject matter and the result, in that it reveals what Atma is, thereby enabling one to become wise. And who is qualified for this knowledge? A qualified person is one who has a good degree of dispassion, vairagya, with reference to his or her likes and dislikes, and who has a desire for liberation, mumuksha. Here, Arjuna is the qualified student and Krishna is the teacher. So, the source of sorrow is either Atma or Anatma. There are only two things. If it is Atma, then your nature must be sad. So, you must be happy being sad. But the thing is, you're not happy being sad. So, in that case, the source of sorrow must be Anatma. And what is Anatma? Is what the Gita Shastra will unveil. So, if you know what Atma is, or if you know what Anatma is, then you have resolved this problem. You've gone to the root of the problem, root of sorrow. A pragmatic, yeah, anyone wants to say anything?
Yeah, I think someone else also wanted to say something.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to just highlighted this line. Who is qualified for this knowledge? A person with a good degree of dispassion and one who has desire for liberation. So reading this line, it triggered one thought that many people, they say they start reading Gita and they say that we are not able to understand. So I was just relating that it is that inside changes until unless that dispassion hasn't occurred, you will not understand Gita. So now I just related with this sentence. I used to whenever this they would say that we don't understand at all. We tried thrice, we tried many times, but it doesn't go into our head. So they were trying to read with the intellect. So basically, intellect is required, yes, but beside that, which is more, the qualification is that a good degree of dispassion with reference to likes and dislikes, and also the desire for liberation. So this line is so important. Yeah, I just wanted to say this.
This is the knowledge given in the advanced course also, silence course. That 4 pillars of this one. No? First is the Viveka, to know the difference between Atma and Anatma, and which is permanent and which is not permanent. And second is the dispassion. See? So these are the two main, and then the 6 wealth and the moksha. The most important point is aim at moksha. That also is most important. If you have just aiming at some pleasure or something, it doesn't. You have to have that aiming at the moksha, then the viveka, then the dispassion. Automatic, everything will fall. Jai.
Satsubodh, I mentioned this sadhana sadhus, sambat, shat sambat, something like
that
this.
also is the four pillars. The
Yeah,
third
yeah.
pillar is the Shat
Viveka,
Sampat,
Vairagya,
Shat Sampat, and then
Shraddha,
Moksha.
yeah. Mumukshutva.
Desire for moksha. Mumukshutva is.
So only when there is a capacity to understand will the Gita Shastra's knowledge actually seep in. And that is what is mentioned there. That degree of dispassion, mumukshutva. So Arjuna was not keen on just getting rid of sorrow superficially. It was, he wanted to get to the root of sorrow, the cause for sorrow, eliminate that. Which is why he asked for Shreyas. He says, what is best for me? Otherwise, he could have just used an escape route, just gone away to Rishikesh, left the chariot, and then gone away. He did not want an escape route. Which is why, again, it reminds me of what Swami Chinmayananda said about how the mind tends to fool us. As in, when there is something at hand, you are going through something, some difficult situation, the mind tends to find so many distractions to temporarily get out of that misery or sorrow rather than face it squarely. Find out, why am I sad? What is it making me sad? What is this sadness? That is Atma Vichara. And that is what the whole Gita Shastra is about. It's giving us the difference between the Atma and Anatma. The distinction is made clear. So once you know either Atma or Anatma, then you know that the cause for sorrow you have understood. A pragmatic view of this verse. This verse can be viewed from the standpoint of a pragmatist who has no belief in any scripture or its statements, or it can be viewed from the standpoint of a person who has faith, Shraddha, in the survival of the soul after death, from the standpoint of a believer, Astika, a follower of the Veda. It can also be viewed from the standpoint of the vision of the Gita, the standpoint of Atma itself. The practical person standpoint, that is a pragmatist standpoint, is that any sorrow, if analyzed, has no legitimacy. Legitimate sorrow is sorrow that is commonly accepted. The question is there a sorrow which can be called legitimate? For a simple practical person, if sorrow produces a result that you want, then it is legitimate for you. Otherwise, it is not. That we all have sorrow is not in question for the practical person, but the point is that it does not produce any result. I didn't quite understand. I'm just reading this again. The practical, so what Swamiji is saying is this verse can be viewed from three standpoints. One is a practical person, the second is the person who has Shraddha, and third, it can be viewed from the standpoint of the Gita itself, from the vision of the Gita. So, a practical person's standpoint is that any sorrow, if analyzed, has no legitimacy. Legitimate sorrow is sorrow that is commonly accepted. The question is there a sorrow which can be called legitimate? For a simple practical person, if sorrow produces a result that you want, then it is legitimate for you. Otherwise, it is not. That we all have sorrow is not in question for the practical person, but the point is that it does not produce any result. Yeah, so it says for a practical person, if that sorrow creates a result that you want, then it is legitimate. Otherwise, there is no legitimacy for any sorrow. But then the fact is that the sorrow does not produce any result, and therefore no sorrow is legitimate. That is what the practical person's point of view is. When a person is sad because someone very near and dear has died, what does this sadness produce? Does it alter the fact that one's friend is dead and gone? No. Sadness does not alter any fact. A woman is crying because someone has died. Crying, she gets up and lights the stove. Crying, she boils water and makes coffee. Crying, she adds milk and sugar. Crying, she drinks it. Nothing changes. Previously, she drank coffee, and now also she's drinking coffee. All that is new is the crying. She is not taking coffee to cry better. No fact is altered. So, this is the pragmatist point of view. So, from a pragmatist point of view, sorrow is not going to help you, and it certainly does not help the dead. If I am dead and gone, I have no problem. Even if I am dying, can I afford to be sad? The heart generally does not give up easily. It keeps trying even when there is pain, even when it misses beats, or even when one artery is gone. It does not give up. However, when you become sad, the heart may think, this fellow is sad. Why should I continue to work? Because you have already decided it too will give up. The will also seems to have a way of moving the limbs and organs to make them tick. If the will is gone, if you are sad, the fighting system will necessarily give up. There is a story about three men who, in the doctor's opinion, were dying of terminal diseases. The doctor therefore asked each of them what he wanted. The first man asked for a priest so that he could make his confession, and this was arranged. The second man wanted to see his family, and the doctor arranged this as well. When the third man was asked what he wanted, he replied, I want another doctor. This third man was practical and wanted to live. He had some he had certain something about him that perhaps would make the heart try harder. Because all the strength he had was required in order to live, he definitely could not afford to be sad. We have already seen that sadness with reference to someone who is dead produces no result, in that it does not alter the fact. But shouldn't you be sad if someone is seriously ill? If you cry when you visit such a man, he will think he is going to die, although all the doctors may have been telling him that his condition is not serious and that he should not worry. The doctors may even have some hope, but your crying is going to make him doubt what the doctors have been saying. In other words, he will read his own death in your crying and then give up. Anyone who is ill requires strength and therefore cannot afford to be sad. Instead of crying, you have to boost the person's morale in whatever way you can, which in turn can boost his or her strength. So, this is all the pragmatist point of view that is being described here. Grief is never legitimate. Thus, crying does not alter the fact that the dead have gone and the dying do not require your crying. If you yourself are dying, crying is also useless. Why then this sorrow? Sorrow still takes place. It is born of confusion, aviveka. What is subject to change will change. Why then sit and say, they are changing, they are changing? Changing is changing. One who dies is one who is subject to death. Therefore, the one who will die dies, and the one who will not die does not die. What is not subject to death will always remain, and what is subject to death will not. Death may come earlier than expected, but it is always expected. although we do not know which breath will be the last. Grief, therefore, is never legitimate. From the practical person's standpoint, sorrow is useless, and for the one who believes that the jiva continues after death of the body, sorrow is also not a problem, because the jiva itself does not die. So this is clear, right? So there are three standpoints. One is the standpoint of the practical person. The other is that of an astika, the one who believes that that the jiva will continue to live even after the physical body is gone. And the third aspect is about what the Gita Shastra says. That is, from the standpoint, it can also be viewed from the standpoint of the vision of the Gita, the standpoint of Atma itself. So, a standpoint of a practical person, any sorrow is, if analyzed, has no legitimacy, because it can be legitimate in case it produces the result that you want. Otherwise, it is not. But the point is that sorrow does not produce the result you want. For example, the person who is dead, you're grieving for that person. The fact that he's dead is dead. I mean, you cannot get him back to life. So that is why Swamiji is described crying. That person gets up, does coffee, drinks, so that sorrow remains, but the sorrow does not alter the fact, does not get you the result that you want. And the result that you want is that you want the person, maybe you're sad because the person is dead and you want the person alive. That is not going to change. Your sorrow is not going to change that. And therefore, sorrow is illegitimate. There is no legitimacy from a practical point of view. Whereas from the jiva point of view, from the astika, the Vedic point of view, also it is not legitimate because the jiva remains. The jiva remains even after the physical body is gone. So, therefore, there is no reason for you to cry. That is it. So, grief is never legitimate.
So what was the second one about he being sick and you want to get a doctor or something like that?
Yeah, that he was just mentioning that even a person who's dying generally does not be sad. He's not sad because there is that will to live. That is why, I mean, here he gave the example of those three people, all three of them having terminal illnesses. And what was their last wish? So the first one wanted,
could not afford to be sad. And the third one.
the first one asked for a priest, and the second asked for a family, for his family to be there.
Okay.
And then the third one wanted to see another doctor. The first two had decided, yes, they're going to die. There was no will to live. They were already sad in the sense they were going to die. Whereas the third one,
Those are the practical. Okay. Got it. So the sadness, there's no reason to be sad because of this. It's not going to change the fact of
it does not alter the fact that the person is dead.
dying or dead or whatever that is happening.
Also, he has the knowledge of Atma and Atma, like he knows that the only the body has died. The s- the the soul is there. So this will come in the second category.
Mhm.
Third category.
The reason,
Astik.
this is he's suggesting to Arjuna, right? Like, why you're worried about them dying, like his teacher and guru and his grandfather and all that, relatives, right? So, in that sense, if we look at it, um, he's giving all these viewpoints, like there isn't any legitimate sorrow. And the sorrow is there, but it's not going to give you any result, because you being sad, that's going to make it any better. It's not going to make it any better.
See, there are two aspects in this verse, no? Ashochan and Vashochastvam.
Mm,
Gatasoon, Agatasoon. Gatasoon is the one who is already dead and gone.
right.
Agatasoon is the one who's still living, which is
Mm-hmm.
what Swamiji is talking here. But shouldn't
Mm,
you be sad if someone is seriously ill? The person is not dead and gone, he's still alive, but he's struggling. If you cry when you visit such a man, he will think he's going to die.
yeah,
Although,
true.
so basically,
Mm,
he's this is from a practical standpoint, yes, but then
mm,
it also brings into the fact that yes, you shouldn't be sad for a person who's dead and gone because it does not alter the fact. But
mm.
shouldn't you be sad for someone who's struggling, who's suffering? Shouldn't you be sad?
It just that's where he was giving that information, right? Like, to give him the strength and things like that.
Yeah.
Not crying, but you kind of understand what their needs are and support them in a way, being kind and all that. It's not, again, still that's not going to take the situation, but it may comfort them, especially somebody terminally ill. But somebody ill, that is something could be cured. I mean, it's more practical, right? We want to take care of them as they're supposed to, instead of worrying and crying about it. That's not going to help in any of that. Mm.
Actually, Krishna wanted to say some are dead and some whoever is there, they will also going to be dead only. So why you are grieving for them? Anyway, you have to fight. Hmm.
Yeah, in my practically, I am telling you, this one really, that's why I like that verse, Suchian. When the first time when Nana taught that one, that's the time I was diagnosed with this my ear problem, like CSF arteria, and it was the leaking fluid in my middle ear. I was I was supposed to have surgery, then in fact, I went. Normally, we worry, oh, they're going to put a hole in the skull, and it's what's going to happen to my brain and all that stuff. Unnecessarily, of course, when the doctor talks, nobody guarantee you anything. They said, well, we can do this. But this particular verse that we read about it, I wasn't worried at all. I mean, I just left it to, give me the strength to get through this. That's all, I prayed. And really, from that point on, yeah, time to time the worry comes, but then this one really helps, why unnecessarily stress yourself out and just to take care of the situation. So, in my case, it really helped me. I really like this verse because it's anyway. I do want. I really like how they explain this in this verse, and I got through it. Um, of course, with God's will, I mean, with grace, that I got through it, and did fine.
So you underwent the surgery, Dr. Mara?
Yes, yes. That was in 21 June. I had surgery. I had
I remember, but exactly what happened, I did not know.
yeah. I had a craniotomy done to fix that. The dura has a small leak, like look small tear and a small amount of like encephalo, like a seal. It wasn't big, but they had to push it and repair that with the dura, and then they took a bone graft from my ear, back of my ear, and then they put a graft for the bone in the temporal bone. There's a bone that separates the brain and the middle ear. There was a little like 4 millimeter hole there. I don't know how it happened. I had a fall 6 months before that, and that I don't know that caused any of that issue. Yeah.
So, therefore,
God.
grief is never, thank you for sharing, grief is never legitimate. Crying does not alter the fact that the dead have gone, and the dying do not require your crying. If you yourself are dying, crying is also useless. Why then the sorrow? Sorrow still takes place. It is born of confusion, aviveka. What is subject to change will change. Why then sit and say they are changing? They are changing. Changing is changing. So, this one sentence is so important. Sorrow takes place. We all experience sorrow. But why does it take place? It is because it is born of confusion, aviveka. Aviveka of what? Atma, anatma. The aviveka of what Atma is, and because we do not know what Atma is, and we do not know also what Anatma is. There is this confusion. We confuse the Anatma to be Atma. One who dies is one who is subject to death. Therefore, the one who will die dies, and the one who will not die does not die. What is not subject to death will always remain, and what is subject to death will not. Death may come earlier than expected, but it is always expected, although we do not know which breath will be the last. Grief, therefore, is never legitimate. From the practical person's standpoint, sorrow is useless. And for the one who believes that the jiva continues after death of the body, sorrow is also not a problem because the jiva itself does not die. So, taking it both ways, both the standpoints, grief is never legitimate. Twofold teaching methodology, pravritti and nivritti. The first portion of the Veda is in the form of pravritti, meaning that you engage yourself in positive pursuits in order to accomplish certain ends which you do not have now and want to accomplish. These pursuits
Well,
may
we
be
read,
progeny.
in introduction, we read, right, two pravritti markas and then one nivritti. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, one was the limited end, and the other one is to attain moksha, to antakarana siddhi.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So the first portion of the Vedas is in the form of pravritti, meaning that you engage yourself in positive pursuits in order to accomplish certain ends, which you do not have now and want to accomplish. These pursuits may be in the form of progeny, wealth, another world, a better birth, and so on. all of which require appropriate effort to achieve the desired ends. This subject matter of the Vedas, in the form of effort based pursuit in terms of action, karma, is called Pravritti Atmaka Shastra. The karma enjoined in the first portion of the Veda is threefold from the standpoint of means of doing it: mental activity manasa, speech vachika, and physical activity kai, involving the limbs kaika. For example, repeating the Vedas is a prayer employing both mind and speech. Chanting the Purusha Sukta is also a prayer in praise of the Lord, the Purusha, who is everything. The Purusha Sukta also gives you the knowledge of the Lord. Any Sukta is both a prayer and something to be understood. Chanting is a karma which is vachika. However, chanting can also be an anga, a part of a ritual. For instance, a pandita may chant the Purusha Sukta line by line while offering a flower or some other oblation. Thus, the same mantras can be chanted, themselves forming a prayer, or used as part of a ritual. This threefold karma, kayika, vachika, and manasa, is the subject matter of the first portion of the Vedas and is what is meant by pravritti, what you must do to accomplish certain desirable ends. The last portion of the Vedas, called Vedanta, is Nivritti Atmaka Shastra, in the sense that is purely in the form of negation. The first part of the verse we are presently studying, Ashocyan Anvashochastvam, which reveals the entire subject matter of the Gita, is also in the form of negation. In Pravritti, the doer, the karta, is retained. The karta is told to do certain things in order to accomplish certain results. Whereas in the Vedanta portion, the very notion that I am the doer is questioned and negated. Here also, there is something to be accomplished, that which is not already accomplished by you, the karta. The accomplishment is negation of the doership in the wake of the knowledge of the Atma. This portion of the Veda, which says that you are the reality of everything, that you are the whole, is in the form of negation, nivritti, in the sense that all the notions that you superimpose upon the self, the Atma, are negated. Therefore, this part of the Veda is in the form of knowledge, jnana, leading to the negation and recognition of what I am not and an appreciation of what I am. Sorrow is something that is superimposed upon the Atma due to the non recognition of the nature, the reality, Swarupa of the Atma. Therefore, all sorrow is really without reason, because sorrow itself has its roots only in non recognition of the self and confusion. The world, Anatma, cannot cause you sorrow, nor can Atma be a source of sorrow. Thus, this verse starts with a negative particle, nan, meaning not, ashocyan, which means na shocyan. Generally, a nan would not be the first word of any shastra, negation not being an appropriate beginning. A shastra should begin with something positive. Here, the shastra being in the form of nivritti begins with nan. It begins with the word ashocyan, meaning that nothing is deserving of grief. Because Arjuna was in sorrow, the word ashocyan is extremely relevant here. The Lord is called Hari because he is the one whose grace removes everything. The Lord is a robber, a remover of all your problems, of everything that you do not want. Lord Vishnu is called Hari and Lord Shiva is called Hara. Both their names originate from the same root hr, to rob, to remove.
Dr. Brahmana, this Purusha Sukta is part of what is Veda? Is it part of the Veda? Or, I don't know.
It's part of the karma kanda, no? Part of the pravritti, the the first part of the Vedas. All the suktas, all of them.
Oh, I see. Sukta means you said something, right? But you read
Sukta
about
is
the
chanting, yeah. Is a
chant. You said something about Sukta. It's a prayer and something to be understood. I think. Any Sukta. I know I heard about it, but I wasn't sure is any particular Veda that has this Purusha Sukta, praise of the Lord.
so there is a twofold teaching methodology, pravritti and nivritti. So the first part of the Vedas is the pravritti marga, which includes three aspects: manasika, vachika, and
Vachika,
kayika.
Kaika.
Kayika karma. So all these are karmas. Even anything mental is manasika, something that needs to be understood.
Right.
So
Even the thought itself, another action.
yes.
Mm.
So the subject matter of the Vedas in the form of effort-based pursuit in terms of action, karma, is called Pravritti Atmaka Shastra. And this is
Mm.
done for what? It is done for a certain end, to accomplish a certain end, a limited end, which
Yeah.
is in the form of progeny or wealth or health or, better birth, a better place in heaven, or even going to heaven. So all these are the ends that you work
Right.
towards through this. And what is it? It is different from just mundane living because you engage yourself in positive pursuits.
Mm.
So Pravritti Marga is a shade better than just living life like a vegetable. You are
Mm.
engaging yourself in prayer, in ritual, in chanting, in doing all of that, right? So, but then it is for a limited end. It is for some gain, some accomplishment. For example, repeating the Veda is a prayer employing both mind and speech. The Purusha Sukta also gives you the knowledge of the Lord. So, any Sukta is both a prayer and
Mm.
something to be understood.
Good. Mm.
Chanting is a karma, of course, which is Vachika. And then sometimes the whole thing can be converted into a ritual. That is, you're offering something with your hands. So the Purusha Sukta can be chanted line by line, and then Swaha, you do that, offering the oblation. So they the threefold karma, Kaika, Vachika, Manasika, is the subject matter of the first part of the Vedas. Whereas the last portion of the Vedas is Nivritti Atmaka Shastra. It's purely in the form of negation.
The Manasa part, what did we do? Thinking about the God, that's what I know you read about Vachika and the Kaika, which is the offering
Yeah,
flower or oblation. Manasa is a mental activity.
it requires mental activity for you to chant. No, without the mental
To
activity, you cannot chant.
right. Yeah, to make your senses indriyas to work. Okay, got it.
See, that is why repeating the Vedas is a prayer employing both mind and speech.
Mm-hmm.
Without the mind, you cannot just keep chanting. You need the mind also to be there.
Mm. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's why when you do chant loudly, then your mouth is vachika is very active. When you do it within your mind, sometimes that is also manasa. Mm. Okay,
Whereas the last portion of the Veda
Vedanta.
is in the form of negation.
Mm.
In Pravritti, the doer is maintained, whereas in Nivritti, the doer is negated.
Related. Yeah.
He's questioned. The very notion that I am the doer is questioned and negated. Here also there is something to be accomplished, but this accomplishment gives you that completion, that which is not already accomplished by you. The accomplishment is negation of the cut of the doer in the wake of knowledge of the Atma.
Yeah, that's very nice, right? We all the time we do it like the karma yoga, yogi. That means we are not going to be a karta. Yeah, meaning Atma is not a non-doer. So when you do it Atmartha karma, that not even called karma anymore. Oh my God. So negated. Nivritti is no negated. Remember that one. Hari removes the everything, the unwanted stuff from us. So Hari and Hara. Hari Hara. The here is removal of. It's a removal, right? The HR is Hari Hara. Hari Hara Hare. Is that what we say? Arohara? Arohara is Hari Hara.
Yeah. I am not sure about that. But
Mm.
here the word anatma cannot cause you sorrow, nor can atma be a source of sorrow. Thus, this verse starts with the negative particle nan, meaning not, ashocyan, which means na shocyan. Generally, a nan would not be the first word of any shastra, negation not being an appropriate beginning. It should begin usually with something positive. Here, the Shastra, being in the form of Nivritti, begins with Nan. It begins with the word Ashocyan, meaning that nothing is deserving of grief. Because Arjuna was in sorrow, the word Ashocyan is extremely relevant here. Yeah.
So
That Hari
the
Hara, no? Haro Hara is the Sandhi.
uh,
Hari and Hara. If
uh,
you tell together, it becomes Harovara. That's Sandhi.
Aro- okay.
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we say that Arohara like in the temple, right? I was just wondering.
So
Because in Tamil,
both
yeah,
Hari and Hara, they come from the same root Hra, to rob or to remove. And
remove, yeah,
who is he? The Lord is a robber, a remover of all your problems,
problems, right?
everything that you do not want.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We'll
Yeah,
stop here
how
today.
nicely they put Harihara.
Mm.
Very nice. Every word has so much meaning, right? Every word we have to read with
Hari is Pravrutti and Hara is Nivrutti.
what?
I don't know whether
Every
we can say that.
removal, right? Yeah.
No, usually like that, no, Hari.
Both have both here,
Removal,
especially
yeah.
what is mentioned here is that
They remove the problems or
remove both of
unwanted
them.
stuff, all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So in the
First,
Hariom,
from the positive point, you have to work out and you become contented, and then automatic dispassion happens, usually. So the contentment also is needed. Hari
Mm,
Hara. Hmm.
also in
this, sorry.
Hariom meditation, we remove Hari. Hari means remover in the
Mm,
Hariom meditation, Gurudev says.
Yeah.
this, so basically, the conclusion is here. It is the sorrow doesn't have any mm, any
Legitimacy, no basis.
no basis. Yeah. So sorrow doesn't have any basis. So there isn't any reason to be grieved. Because the anatma also doesn't, there are two things they gave, right? The anatma and the atma. Atma also is not grieve, not have to grieve or something. You'll read the line. I forgot what
See,
exactly.
Atma, it cannot be the source of sorrow, because if you
Source
are,
of right.
if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
are
yeah.
sorrow, then you should be happy that you are sad. So Atma cannot be the source of sorrow. And is Anatma the source of sorrow?
No.
No, because what is changing is changing.
Mm-hmm.
The cause for sorrow is this confusion, this aviveka.
Oh,
That,
right. That's where they brought this Atma and Anatma part, right?
right.
Okay. Yeah, the confusion that you don't have the between what is permanent, not permanent, and all that stuff. Mm. Wow.
So we'll stop here today and we'll continue tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. This about this. It would be nice to read it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
We actually did a repeat of the first. In the beginning, we did the repeat of the first of this chapter of verse number 11. We came
Oh,
down
is
here.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is the 12, right? The
No,
number.
no, we're still on the 11th verse.
The association part. Association and association. That is, I thought that was the 12th sloka. Okay, it's 11th sloka.
11th.
Okay.
ॐ लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु जय गुरुदेव
Take your time. Thank you.